Hello, and welcome to today's Public Sector Customer Panel. My name is Chris Ahern, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Before we get started, please take a second to review our Safe Harbor statement. You've likely already seen it a few times during other presentations. There may be information shared in today's session that could be categorized as forward-looking statements. Any such statements are not guarantees of future performance. Also, please keep in mind that any organization names and logos that might appear in today's session do not represent an endorsement of Smartsheet from their owners. It's been said that every company is now a technology company. I think it's fair to say that the same is true in the public sector. Every agency, every organization is a technology agency or organization. In short, like their commercial peers, agencies are looking to optimize and improve how they deliver on their mission by leveraging technology. This phenomenon has become particularly critical over the past 6 months as new ways of working have emerged by necessity. Old approaches to work, where employees are engaged in structured work, leveraging older monolithic legacy systems, has given way to a more dynamic environment where the majority of work is unstructured. Work today is mostly self-managed by workers or teams. On top of that, now, the majority of workers and teams are working remotely. Given this shift, questions arise for government entities on how best to enable the workforce to execute their work in this new environment. We're really fortunate here today to have a panel of government veterans to share their insights and experience. We'll hear from them on how they're optimizing work productivity and driving collaboration across their organizations in this new work environment we find ourselves in. They will also talk a little bit about how they're using Smartsheet to help. With that, I'm really pleased to introduce our panelists and invite each of them to talk a little bit about their organizations, their role, and how they've adapted over the past 6 months. First up is Deanna Vandemere from Mesa Valley School District. Deanna, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Deanna Vandemere. I'm an Executive Administrative Assistant for Mesa County Valley School District 51 in Grand Junction, Colorado. I've worked for the district for 33 years, and currently I support the offices of Curriculum and Learning Design, Assessment, Professional Learning, and Induction, just to name a few. District 51 is the 12th largest of 178 school districts in Colorado, and we currently serve approximately 22,000 students. We are the largest employer on the Western Slope, yet we are amongst the lowest funded districts in our state. Our district's vision statement is engage, equip, and empower our learning community today for a limitless tomorrow. I leverage Smartsheet in many different ways, from balancing and reconciling 15 different budgets, which includes a process for budget proposals, the requests, manager roll-up sheets. I have developed and managed a process for new hires in our mentor induction program, created an application and approval process for offering professional learning courses, worked on a new solution for our testing and assessment protocol requests and inventory management system. I also most recently developed a high school new course approval process, which now includes an online course catalog system for the curriculum and counseling departments of our district. Thank you for asking me to be here today.
And Deanna, if you could just add on, how have things been for you in the school district over the past 6 months or so since the pandemic shifted the way in which we've all been working?
Well, we were actually nearing the end of our spring break when the lockdown orders were issued within our state. And our learning curve was really steep, and our district administrators had to work quickly. They had 2.5 days, literally, to figure out a plan on how to go from in-person learning to remote learning for our students and staff. In addition, we had to deal with all of our administrative offices transitioning to working from home. We still had to continue with all our planned professional learning for teachers. We had to close out the spending of our fiscal year budget, and we had to also provide support to teachers in this new environment. It was definitely uncharted territory and a lot of struggles, but a lot of successes. One of those successes was actually directly related to my use of Smartsheet. I helped develop a request for support process for teachers so that if they were struggling, they could reach out to anyone within our staff, like our coaches, our instructional model coaches, the technology support team, anyone. If they needed help, we could be there for them, even though we were all working from home at that time. I also had to figure out a way to do what's called a Memorandum of Understanding. Those are contracts for additional stipends that teachers can earn. And we now could no longer do the paper process of running signatures around the district and getting those signed. Those are now all 100% within Smartsheet, and they are such a success that our HR department is actually letting me run them this whole current school year as well, and probably into the near future. I don't see us actually ever going backwards. And I'm also working right now with our finance department to take an old process that was on a triplicate form and required signatures and sending through snail mail to the district finance office. And that's our expenditure transfer request. And that's going to become automated using Smartsheet as well. Another big challenge that we had was at the end of the school year, as every other district out there, we had to figure out, how do we graduate our 2020 seniors? Then we had to deal with hiring freezes and state budget cuts and creating a plan on what it was going to look like when we resumed classes. All of this now lives in structures and solutions that I've built using Smartsheet.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Deanna. It must have been trying times, and it sounds like a lot of re-engineering and innovation had to take place. And here at Smartsheet, we also really appreciate that you use the word engage in your motto. So thank you for that as well. Next up, we'll turn to Doug Perry from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Doug, welcome.
Hey, Chris. It's great to be here today. As the Deputy CIO at NOAA, I think that I have the coolest job in the federal government. And I'll tell you a little bit about what NOAA does and what I do. I've got over 30 years experience with NOAA, and started as an electronics engineer and converted over to an IT professional somewhere in the middle of that. I've spent most of my public service career focused on building solutions that enable NOAA to perform its mission better. I think that enabling our mission is a really big motivator for me. You'll hear mission mentioned several times probably today from me. NOAA is an agency that enriches life through science, and our mission is to observe the changing environment around us and provide data products that enable the public to make informed decisions. You can think about a hurricane forecast and the need for someone on the coast to know whether that's going to impact them or not, and making a decision whether to flee their home or stay. So NOAA collects information from a variety of observation platforms that include satellites, ships, planes, buoys, uncrewed systems, and embedded sensors around the world, really. And with that information, we use high performance computing. I think we typically have about 3.5 billion observations every day that go into making a weather forecast. So it's a huge amount of data that has to be processed and analyzed to produce the forecast. And then sort of the final step is we disseminate products to the public and use both public and private infrastructure to do that, both on premise and in the cloud. NOAA understands that protecting the integrity and availability of that data is paramount, because lives really depend upon it. So I think that it's really a cool job. We are all about improving our work processes and work management, and that's where we found Smartsheet to be a really good tool for us to use.
And Doug, if you could share a little bit about your experience over the past 6 months, taking all those very diverse mission sets that you're talking about and having a workforce that probably wasn't fully used to telecommuting, but obviously had to swing 100% in that direction. How did that go in terms of supporting the mission?
Well, fortunately, I think NOAA was positioned pretty well. We had embraced telework several years ago and have built remote access capabilities into our infrastructure. So we were really able to transition from being in the office to almost full telework very quickly within a matter of days, and didn't really see any impact to our mission. Our mission does require that we have some of our workforce in offices, whether they're working in labs or whether they're at a weather forecast office. But predominantly, our employees can work remotely. I think recently we tallied about 80% of our workforce was working remotely. So obviously that requires collaboration tools and networking capability. And we've really realized a lot of success just because of planning that we had done beforehand and testing we'd done beforehand. So we were the second federal agency that migrated to cloud. We followed GSA back in 2012, 2013. We transitioned to Google, the Google Suite for our email and other collaboration tools. And that we've been able to leverage that over the years. So when it came to the pandemic, we really had a suite of tools that were in place. Smartsheet was a more recent addition just in the last couple of years, but we've also found Smartsheet to be a great addition for collaboration, especially project management, workflow management. So really, it's been a pretty good story for NOAA, I think, so far with the pandemic.
That's great. Thank you for sharing all that, Doug. And I always like to tell people, if you had fish for dinner last night or in the last week, you got to thank NOAA for the quality of that product. So thank you for sharing. And finally, I'm pleased to introduce Joe Wallace from the United States General Services Administration. Joe, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Joe Wallace, I've been at the General Services Administration now for about 5 years, 15 years as a civil servant. At GSA, we have our fingers in a lot of different aspects of the federal workforce. So if you're a federal employee or you go into a federal building, or you're fortunate or unfortunate enough to be in a federal courthouse, depending, I guess, on which side you're on, they're all owned, operated, run by the General Services Administration. We have one of the largest real estate portfolios in the world. In addition to the ongoing maintenance, upkeep, renovation, construction jobs that we have with the public building service side, we also have the Federal Acquisition Service, so GSA schedules. We do assisted acquisitions. We also manage one of the largest automotive fleets in the country. So a lot going on there. In addition to all of that, we also have our Office of Government-Wide Policy, so things like travel regulations and things like that. So a lot of varied work efforts that go on within GSA. And, it's been a real pleasure working with Smartsheet, because we've been able to disperse Smartsheet amongst all of them, and they've all been able to take the tool set and adapt it to each into their own individual kind of workflows. So be that construction, maintenance, fleet, the tool set kind of applied to all of those. And it's been very, very useful tool for a lot of folks.
That's great, Joe. Could you talk a little bit about what the experience has been for GSA during the big workforce shift over the past 6 months?
Yeah, Doug stole my thunder a little bit. GSA was one of the pioneers moving to the cloud in the federal government. So for us, actually, one of the first tasks we had when the order came down was to start benchmarking all of our systems. So how many emails are being sent, how many are being received, phone calls, video chats, how many logins are we having into our various systems, what the level of activity was within our various systems. So we built dashboards for those. And interestingly enough, there was no drop off. If anything, we saw like increases in email traffic, increases in the number of video conferences. But GSA has really not missed a beat throughout the past 6 months. If anything, I would say the amount of work that we've been doing has, if anything, increased. I know I'm probably like not the only one here who's working longer hours. There was no lull for summer vacations and the like. So it's been quite the sprint over the last 6 months, making sure everything stays up and running. We have begun transitioning some of our workforce back, like Doug. We do have folks that need to be in the building for building maintenance and fleet and things like that. But for the most part, most of our workforce is staying at home. Cloud systems that we've really been transitioning to over the past few years have really facilitated, the ability of our workforce to really work from anywhere, and it's been really helpful.
Thank you for that, Joe. And I know you're being a little bit modest for our listeners out there. GSA actually manages 350 million square feet across 8,600 buildings in 2,000 locations. And I might have some of those numbers wrong, but serve in the capacity as the nation's largest public landlord as well. So Joe, if you think about during the pandemic, I mean, were there some specific challenges or blockers? I mean, it sounds like you and Noah, had some preparedness in terms of telework and those sorts of things and some of the equipment in place. Nevertheless, I'm sure there were some challenges and issues that might have come up. And was Smartsheet able to help GSA face any of those challenges?
So some of the biggest challenges that kind of jumped out at us was, first of all, was establishing that comfort level. Are things going to break? What's going to break? How's it going to break? What folks need to be here? What don't? What resources do they need to be able to not be in the building or not have to come into the building? So that was a lot of the initial churn that occurred when the shutdown order first came through. And kind of where Smartsheet kind of helped fill that gap was it's a system that was already configured that our workforce could use it from anywhere. And there was no real need for us from an IT support shop perspective to have to do anything to help keep our users in the platform using it and as productive as possible, given all of the changes around work that was occurring at the time. So yeah, it was, not to make light of it, but there was some challenges that we did have to face, but by and large, GSA was postured very well to make that transition. And Smartsheet was I would say a cog in the overall machine that enabled us to make that transition with as little impact to our customers and to our workforce as possible.
That's great. Thank you for that, Joe. Deanna, you shared a couple of specific challenges that you had. Were there any others that you can think of?
Well, honestly, just being home and being able to engage and keep the students wanting to do their learning. We had a lot of troubles with that overall. But the main focus for the school district has always been, how do we get back in the classroom? How do we get students back? How do we do it safely? And one of the things that we really needed to address was, how do we also do a daily COVID symptom tracker for 3,000 plus staff members? In addition, we also have to do the same thing for all students if we're going to get them back into the classroom. So we actually did land on using Smartsheet because of the forms and automations, the reporting, the dashboard capabilities. All of that was really important. Supervisors, principals, as well as our district nursing coordinators, she really needed to have all of those pieces of information. Our nurse has to stay in constant contact with the health department in the state, and we have a lot of rules and regulations that we've got to kind of monitor and continue to track. The only challenge really with choosing to use the Smartsheet was the row limitation. But we were able to solve that by just literally having it set up to automatically send a PDF to one of our tech department team. They archive it, they wipe the sheet clean, and we go about our business each day. So that's been working really well. We've had it up and running since about the second week of July, and we have not really experienced any problems with the structure. Mainly our programs are really related to our district's internet capabilities and our overall bandwidth. Like when all the teachers came back on board and we had all the staff and they're all trying to log in at about the same time, it was starting to crash the system. Those were some of our biggest challenges to get the schools up and running and get the kids back in. We also, we had a lot of parents that were facing a lot of the fear, just like everyone in the whole world. And we decided as a district that we would offer an option, and we now have a new online school that we created really pretty quick like. And that was really a wonderful thing, but now it's leading to some deficits in our brick and mortar schools. So we're actually using Smartsheet. First, we used it to pull in all the student schedules from across the valley for all the students that were going to transfer to the online school. This allowed the administration to do their best to make sure we're meeting those scheduling needs of those students, that we focus on the core content classes first, fill electives whenever we can, and on high school seniors especially, making sure they get their AP classes and that we're meeting graduation requirements, because we don't want this to hold them back from accomplishing their goals. And so Smartsheet was such a help there. The other thing that we've now found is, because we had to staff the online school, that is still impacting the brick and mortar schools. So now we're working on a systemic staffing, and we're using Smartsheet capabilities to it's like an intake form, and we're using the automation. We're going to track the placements and the movements across the districts from the person all the way to their technology, and be able to make real-time adjustments and navigate as we go.
And I'm sure many of our listeners have children, many of whom are probably in close proximity to them right now. And, the work that you're doing there is something that I'm sure many can identify. Back here on the East Coast, we've just started this school year. And I know a lot of the jurisdictions are wrestling with a lot of those issues as well. Doug, how about at NOAA? Were there any specific challenges you can think of that came up, and was Smartsheet able to help?
Yeah, when Deanna mentioned some of the internet contention issues, somebody remarked this morning that schools started in the National Capital Region this week, and that slow internet is the equivalent of sitting behind a school bus when you're doing the morning commute. But one of the things that we've noticed is that people seem to exhibit some characteristics of being overwhelmed sometimes. Inboxes fill up very quickly when everyone's communicating by email. One of the things previously we used email predominantly for tracking and tasking work. And we realized that's really not the way it should be done. And so that's one of the big benefits we've seen with Smartsheet. And we set a goal to transition from email-based task tracking to Smartsheet-based tracking so that we can monitor progress and share information. The other area I think is that we had invested in tools, cloud-based tools in the past that we still use for things like IT service management and project management. But the ease with which our employees can create something useful and share results with Smartsheets, really we see as a game changer. And then I guess the last point was shortly after we had converted over to Google several years ago, I became aware that Smartsheet was available, but it's only been in the last couple of years that we were able to first pilot and then subscribe to Smartsheet. We went from initial pilot of about 75 subscriptions to over 400 this year. And we've got about almost 2,000 active users. So we've really seen some explosive growth and lots of interesting use cases and demonstration of time savings that I could go into at a later date. But that's things I've observed.
That's great. And I would just say, as we close off talking specifically about what's gone on over the past 6 months and being a DC resident here and working close with the federal government, I think it's absolutely amazing and astounding the job the federal workforce and managers and folks like Doug and Joe did to kind of keep people productive. And yeah, there was a period of a week or two where everyone was getting used to it. But, to me, it appeared to get back to business as usual. And you also, I saw statistics where productivity was higher and a lot of positive things were going on as well. And, I know Deanna, it sounds like that, was the same experience for your team there in Mesa. Switching gears a little bit, and I'm going to stick with you, Doug. What advice would you give to other organizations in the public sector as they consider whether they want to adopt Smartsheet or not? Doug?
Sorry about that. Speaking of internet contention, I just had a dropout. So I think you were asking me what advice I'd have for other public sector organizations. So I've got a few points I think that we've learned. We were, I think, the first federal government agency to go into the new government instance on the FedRAMP instance, and we worked with Smartsheet to as a sponsor for their ATO. We did that because we recognized there was a lot of value there. So some of the things that I would suggest is there's definitely education involved for your user base about who needs subscriptions and who doesn't need subscriptions. I think that there's some adjustment that you go through there because everyone wants a subscription, but they don't really necessarily need it. I think that another key is that working with the Smartsheet team early to create a portal that's unique for your organization is important. And then you can use that portal to answer questions, direct your employees to that portal for training resources, et cetera. I think that the other thing is leveraging the Smartsheet training that's online and the support, online support and on the phone support, and build that into your support approach is really an important thing. The administrative overhead is pretty light. We get by with just a couple of people supporting the product from an administrative perspective. However, it would be useful, and hopefully this is something that the federal clients can leverage, or can lobby Smartsheet to do, to build out some more of the administrative tools for subscription management, access controls for external users, and things like that would be really helpful. And then rolling out with a pilot, I think, is really helpful for you to kick the wheels. And then you need to be prepared for rapid adoption because it will really take off. And so the last thing, too, is we launched a user group just in the past few months and have really seen the sharing of information that happens in that user group and adoption of best practice and things like that. So I think that's also a really important thing.
That's great. Thank you for that, Doug. How about you, Joe? Same question.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes to everything Doug just said. One of the first things that popped to my mind when I heard this question was plan for growth. We started 5 years ago at 100 licenses. We have grown up to, I think we're at about 700 licenses now, conveying to users what constitutes needing a license, what doesn't need a license is really important. But the amount of growth that we've seen over the past, especially the past 2 years, has been really amazing. Another thing I would say from an IT shop, be prepared to be amazed at what your general user can do. Like Doug said, the amount of resources that are available to them from just the Smartsheet's online help, YouTube videos, and so forth, has really allowed our end users to produce some really impressive results. We've got a region down in Texas that has built their own task management system that even the Smartsheet support folks have been really impressed by. We've got just odds and ends that pop up they're solving business processes that now don't have to get funding. They don't have to get escalated to the IT shop. It's being done in a secure way that IT and IT security can be happy about. And it's solving the business need as the need arises, which is just extremely useful from, your overtaxed, underfunded IT shop. So I would say be prepared for that and be prepared to kind of think of it that way. But yeah, be prepared for growth. Make sure folks know what a license means and whether or not they actually need it. And, like Doug said, I'll second some extra administrative kind of capabilities would be helpful. But, by and large, having seen the product grow over the past several years, it's definitely come a long way in that respect. And yeah, I mean, Doug keeps stealing all my stuff. But it's been a really great journey. Our users are really, really happy with it. And, I always look forward to see what they come up with next. It's been a really interesting thing to watch when you let folks give them the tools and let them build it themselves.
That's great. And, all of you have mentioned things that we might be able to enhance about the product. Well, you're in the right venue at Engage here over the next day here to make your thoughts known. So please be vocal. Deanna, what advice would you give other organizations that are deploying Smartsheet?
Well, a lot of my ideas were similar to Doug and Joe, but honestly, when it comes to public schools, be okay and embrace outside the box thinking. Try new things and don't be afraid to fail forward. Learn from your mistakes. One of the things that we found right away is that at least for our public school system, we have totally different case scenarios, and we had to be really okay with it not fitting the mold or looking like all of the examples in the videos or lessons that are currently up on the help. Actually, attending Engage helped me immensely because I was able to network and meet other people in the similar role. And that helped to be able to share ideas and bounce all of our different use case scenarios off of each other. That and joining Smartsheet community was my biggest help. That is just, that helps a lot. I also would highly endorse getting your product and solution certifications. That helps as well. Because we do have to use it in a totally different way than I think it was originally built and intended for. But man, when you figure it out and you find that sweet spot, the sky's the limit, and it does amazing stuff.
That's great. Those are all valuable insights. Getting a little bit more granular, Joe, how have you integrated Smartsheet into your tech stack there at GSA?
Yeah, and I think Doug touched on this a little bit. So we came into Smartsheet well before FedRAMP for Smartsheet was even really considered. So we have a very large footprint in the commercial space. I know, Chris, we've talked about this a lot over the past few months. We're gearing up to make our transition into the FedRAMP environment, which will really open up a lot of options for us, because I have been getting pushed for the Google connectivity or connections, the tools that will leverage Gmail, the tools that will let us hook into Jira. We've got a lot of stuff that lives out in Salesforce. All of these things that we would have a very strong demand signal for that we just haven't been able to take advantage of because we're writing the commercial environment right now. And we're waiting for that transition into the FedRAMP environment. So I think for most folks, they'll hopefully be going into the FedRAMP environment first. Highly recommend that. Saves you from having to go through the trials and tribulations that we're going through, trying to get everything planned and staged so we can get it moved. So that's been the big hindrance for us. We have still been able to use the Google Drive integration, so we've been able to leverage that. But other than that, we've been a little limited just because the security posture of GSA.
All right, that's very helpful, Joe. Deanna, back to you, and you've provided a bunch of good use cases already, but how about one more that you think is mission critical, where you've really been able to kind of keep projects on task utilizing Smartsheet?
Well, I use a lot of cross-sheet formulas, sheet summary, Metric sheets are honestly my friend. We also hold a lot of meetings and do check-ins, but we've now had to switch to an online environment. And so we are actually doing all of that virtually. And it's been working good. We also, in our district, we have a wonderful in-house programmer. And so we actually leverage some of the open API capabilities, and we take our sheets and our projects to the next level doing so.
All right, thanks for that. Hey, Doug, the next question is for you. How did your agency approach the governance and management of Smartsheet across your organization?
That's a really good question. One of the first things that attracted us to Smartsheet was the platform's attention to cybersecurity. And I read through the assessment and was really impressed. I thought it matched up really well to NOAA's risk management approach. So once we sort of vetted it from a security standpoint, we then looked at it from a business case perspective. And we've seen rapid adoption at the grassroots. And so anytime you implement governance, you do it at the risk of squashing enthusiasm for your users. So we've taken sort of a very soft start approach and have tried to demonstrate value in any of the things we put forward as a standard template or something of that nature. The other thing we did is we have implemented at our Program Management Council, which is our highest level oversight for our projects, Smartsheet as a replacement to PowerPoint slides for providing project status. And the council has found it to be very useful because they can see real-time information instead of slides that are 2 weeks old. And our project managers have said that it saves them about 10 hours for each time they have to brief by just referring to a real-time dashboard. So we've seen big benefit there. So we've sort of taken top-down, bottom-up approach. And then lastly, we recently purchased Control Center, and we hope to pilot it this fall. And we're looking forward to potentially having a way to have more standard templates and standard processes for how we manage our projects and programs. So looking forward to that in the near future.
Well, thanks, Doug. And I'm sure folks that know are looking forward to both preparing and sitting through fewer PowerPoint presentations as time goes on. So in the time that we have remaining here, I would ask each of you to take out your crystal balls, and we're going to be on the other side of this thing in the not too distant future, and just share with me how you think about remote work productivity and collaborative work management in 2020 and beyond. Deanna, thoughts on that?
Yeah, with district, we have to be in the schools and we have to be in the classroom, but we have learned a lot with having to go remote. If anything, that is just increased some of our productivity and collaboration. We're not always stuck in meetings. We have used and leveraged Smartsheet even more than we were before the shutdown. But basically, it all comes back to kids. They are the core of what we do as a district. And if we don't adapt, we're going to be left behind, and we can't leave our kids behind. It's important that we always keep our eye on that goal. And we've got to stay in a collaborative environment as a district, or we're gonna lose our kiddos.
Okay, thanks for that. Joe, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it a little bit earlier. This experiment has seen, increased productivity across a lot of agencies. Folks are getting used to it, kind of getting into the swing of it. And, the churn that I'm hearing now is, are we looking at potentially a new normal? So I know the things that we're really trying to hone in on and focus in on is what's working, what's not working, and how can we get what's not working to what's working, and assuming that this is kind of the way we're going to be working going forward. I think proving out, technology over the past several years has reached a state where it's able to support us working this way. And, tools like Smartsheet, being a cloud software that's easy for us to integrate into the rest of our technology stack, and it's available to all of our users to consume, it really lends itself towards this new environment, this new normal. So I'm looking for this, plan for the worst, assume that things are going to stay like this, and, adapt as things come, because if this year has shown us anything, you need to be able to pivot on a dime, because you never know what's going to come at us next.
That's great. Thanks for that, Joe. And Doug, finally over to you. I mean, we know NOAA can predict the weather, so let's hear what your predictions are in terms of how things are going to look going forward.
Well, interestingly enough, we had a discussion about this recently. We're working on our new strategic plan, and specifically for workforce, and how do we prepare our workforce for the workplace of the future. And traditionally, we have gone about matching people to jobs, and jobs typically consisted of hundreds or thousands of activities or tasks. What's happening is a paradigm shift to matching people and automation, for instance, bots, to tasks. And so Smartsheet's a really good platform for that paradigm shift because of its ability to document workflows and manage work, and the ability to look and see what's best suited for a person versus what's best suited for the machine or automation. And so we're very interested in learning how to use Smartsheet to automate our current manual processes and help figure out that mix between people and automation, which is really where the collaboration is going to be in the future.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Doug. So that wraps up our questions, and your guys' input has just been spectacular. So Deanna, Joe, and Doug, I mean, we cannot thank you enough for being customers, but also for coming on and sharing your insights and stories here today. So thank you very much for that. The virtual applause is going on in the background right now. I can hear it from afar. For our listeners, I just want to make you aware of these resources that are available. Some are specific to Smartsheet, and I think Deanna referenced some of them a little bit earlier. But those are available to you, as well as programs that are specific for the Smartsheet Gov product. And with that, I'll sign off for the panel. And again, just give a final thanks to our panelists as well as all of our listeners today. Thank you.